that's kind of why you get sucked in so deeply, is not the desire for that end result. It's just the way it's making you feel. The way it's making you feel is where the power is.
It's all an inside job.
It's all an inside job.
And it's like the thrill of the boat is really the thrill of researching the boat, right? We'll start off right away. I watched this amazing, it just blew me away. But I watched this clip. It came up on one of my feeds, and it was a doctor, and he was talking about, his name is, I'm looking it up right now, Dr. Alok Kanojia. And he was on the Diary of a CEO podcast with Steven Bartlett. So look that up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the Diary. Did you ever seen that the podcast?
I think I listened to the episode when Rich Roll interviewed that guy, Steven Bartlett, Diary of a CEO.
Oh, yeah. I listened to that one too. That was a good one. So this one, anyways, what he was talking about is kind of like a lot that we talk about. But he basically said, he used a couple metaphors, which I thought were great. He's kind of funny and irreverent. And he said, listen, one of my favorite metaphor was, if you break your leg, right, no amount of bench pressing is going to heal your leg.
Interesting.
So you could focus on all these things, right, that are going to build you up and make you healthier and do this. If you don't deal with the injury that you have, you're never going to get better. And what he was really talking about is, he was talking about like psychic trauma. And what we, the whole thing, I was telling someone the other day that the whole thing about trauma is it's really a terrible word. The ancient, like Hindus, what they called it were samskaras, and they're impressions in our psyche. And if we have, if our conscious mind is like 0.5% of our brain, the 99% of the processing in our brains is below the surface, and it's all in the subconscious. When he's talking about an injury, what he's talking about is a samskara, where if something happens, if you're ridiculed by your brother or at school or whatever, when you're
create
4
like a
years
subconscious interpretation, and that kind of sticks in there, right?
Yeah, it sticks in there. And what your brain does, because we're such social creatures, is that, and we're talking about mild incidences here. There are much greater incidences. But if you have a mild incident like that at 5 years old, when you have enormous amounts of plasticity in your brain says, you know what? We're not going to draw in school anymore because we're ridiculed. And because we're such social creatures, we respond. And all of a sudden, a kid who is creative is all of a sudden doesn't even realize it, at 23, tells everyone, I can't draw, I'm not artistic, blah, 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 blah. All human beings are born artistic. That's our nature. And so that is what we really mean by a trauma. It's a psychic impression, a samskara inside of the subconscious mind. And so what he's saying is that, listen, when you have these samskaras, what happens is, if in your life you're functioning 98% or 97% of the time without any issues, but then something happens and you get triggered, what that evokes, by trigger we mean evokes, this memory, right? Subconscious memory. Then the response happens. And when the response happens, we often go into a mild or heavier state of fight or flight. And that clams us up. It starts to shut down our entire nervous system, and we get uncomfortable, and we find it very difficult to engage in peak performance. Right within this podcast, we're so focused on peak performance, and that's just what we talk about so much.
Sure.
But what he's saying is, okay, great, you're functioning great most of the time. you still got a broken leg. And when that injury is, someone touches that, you recoil in such a way that you're now, that behavior starts to sabotage your desires and your goals, no matter what it is. Because guess what, being artistic, you may not be, it might not involve drawing anymore. It may just involve coming up with a solution to a novel problem in your life. But sometimes we just shut down and we get small in the face of something like that. We don't even know why. People don't even know why. And a lot of people are not willing to be vulnerable and say, I got an issue, I got to deal with this issue. And they don't even want to look at it because it's so uncomfortable. No one wants to admit it. We live in such a tough guy culture. And that's kind of what he was addressing. He used another metaphor where he's like, listen, if you have a glass of water and someone pisses in your water, you put all the sugar you want in that water, it's still piss water. You got to figure
Yeah.
out how to get the piss out of the water.
Yeah.
So I was listening to this and I was like, damn, this dude is on it right here. This is exactly the issue. Because then what happens, we talk about this, about like coping mechanisms, like all of a sudden we feel small, we feel inadequate, we feel whatever it is. All of a sudden we have this uncomfortable energy in the body and we want to cope because it's so uncomfortable. So, some people go do jujitsu, some people run, those are healthy responses, but some people drink, some people do drugs, and some people, some people eat and binge, and all of a sudden they're overweight. This is
Yeah.
the root of it. This is that broken leg that they're not addressing, that we need to figure out how to address.
Yeah, it's
Anyways, that's kind of
not
a
being able
recap.
to not being able to sit with yourself while you feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like you having, and it's powerful stuff. Cause I'm like that. I very much to like if I have a problem, I need to solve it. You know what I mean? Like what's interesting is that like a lot of positive things in my life have been produced from that reflex. So like there's a lot of positive reinforcement from being the type of person that's like, oh, we got an issue. Let's let's uh let's fix it. Let's find the solution,
Yeah.
And but when you're talking about some of these deeper things that are more subconscious and aren't so black and white, you can't always, and like I've even like had these moments to where I'm aware of my mind and I'm watching my mind like doing the math, like trying to figure it out. And sometimes like you can't. You just need to let time move a little bit, and then that intensity of that feeling ultimately always reduces. Maybe it doesn't go away completely, but 99% of the time the intensity of that emotion will be reduced greatly by time. But in the moment, you want to solve it. You want to make it go away. You want to go from being uncomfortable to comfortable. And oftentimes, I mean, I've done a lot of stupid things to, gain that level of comfort, and you see, like you're saying, you see that, that's the basis of drug addiction, and that's the basis of all sorts of problems.
Sex addiction,
All of
and
it.
yeah, and it's kind of wild because and he talks about that. He's like, you know, I'll jump ahead. Like he talks about, it's very interesting that you say that. He talks about how the solution to this, and he says this, he's like, we don't understand why it works, but awareness, sitting in your awareness in the quiet and watching your mind work actually is the way that you heal these problems. The more you push them away, the more you try and numb, the more you try and avoid, the
And soothe.
stronger it's going to get, and soothe and all. Yeah. And so what happens, I think, is that, with some skaras in the mind, they can be good or bad. They're impressions in our psyche, right? So energy moves through our subconscious into the conscious mind. And when it hits a blockage, it creates like sometimes it's a desire. Like you satisfy a desire like with drugs, and then becomes greater and greater and greater, not just physical addiction, but a mental addiction. Like porn or whatever is like it can become like a mental addiction. That's a samskara in the mind that the solution for that is, from what he's saying also, is we have to sit in silence. And that's so hard in our society where we're constantly seeking distraction and stimulation. He's like, but
And
we
it's
don't
all
understand why it
around.
is. Yeah.
The distraction and the stimulus. I mean, even like you mentioned porn. Like, I mean, so many people. I mean, it's just like a regular routine. Like that's not that, like, biologically, that to pop your phone out of your pocket and just oh, I'm bored, I'm gonna go fucking rub one out to Pornhub. Like
Mm-hmm.
like there's got to be some sort of a messing with the biological imperatives of how the reproductive organ. You know what I mean? Like
I
there's
think
got
it
to be.
deepens that samskara. That is itself becomes a samskara in the subconscious, in the mind. That the more we feed it, the more it grows. The more when we have that trauma in the subconscious, the more we avoid it, the more it grows. In Buddhism, they are like the root of all suffering is desire and avoidance.
Mm.
And they knew that. They were like, if you sit with your psyche long enough, we've been human for so long that it's not. They figured out this technology of the mind and science of the mind thousands of years ago. The more we avoid, the more we give into desire, the more we create, the stronger these things get in our samskaras. And so what he was saying is like, the only solution is to sit with it, to sit with that craving. And like you were saying, you hit it right on the head. It will pass.
Yeah,
Doesn't
it
feel like it's going to
subsides.
pass. It doesn't feel like it,
No,
but it will. No matter what
dude.
it is, if it's heartache, if it's whatever, it will. The craving for food, the craving for drugs, the craving for for chocolate. Sometimes, man, I get craving for chocolate that is so intense, and I'm just like, I just need a chocolate bar right now. A
Yeah.
chocolate bar. And sometimes I give in, but the difference, I think the difference now is that I am very intentional about it, right? So I understand, okay, I've got this addiction, this craving. I don't want to say I have an addiction for chocolate, but I have a craving sometimes. And often, here's what's crazy about my chocolate thing. And sometimes I'll be like, you know what? I've been eating really good for a week. I'm gonna have some chocolate. I love chocolate with almonds or macadamia nuts or something like that. But what's oftentimes, and I'm aware of it because I'll sit and watch it, is oftentimes that craving is triggered by stress, because I know when I eat that chocolate, it's going to change my brain chemistry and I'm going to be happy. And so I'm really not even really desiring the chocolate. I'm desiring the effects of the chocolate.
So right now I'm imagining chocolate, and I just
Mm-hmm.
imagine the bar with the almonds, and I'm listening to you talk about it, and like I'm starting to feel in my mouth like a sensation. Like, no
Yeah.
bullshit.
Isn't that
Because it's
wild?
like, why can't we just unplug from the fucking matrix already? I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
I know, right?
I don't
Right?
want to do this anymore, man. I don't want to.
Isn't it fucking crazy, man?
It is. It is. It is so crazy. And what's even crazier is like we're sitting here talking about this, and like, you and I have spent a lot of time and research and just living life and meeting people, and like we're somewhat aware of this. You
Mm-hmm.
know, what's amazing is the amount of people that are walking around on two legs that are unaware of what we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
completely. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, because you hit it right on the head. What happens is that it's really a question of, are you ready to wake up? I mean, Matrix is my favorite movie, so for so many reasons, but that's really the question, right? Are you ready to fucking take this pill? Which one are you going to take?
I
Red pill or blue
understand. I
pill?
understand why a lot of people don't and won't. And maybe they're better off a little bit. I don't know.
Okay, so what I think is, I kind of view like the world as like this simulation of it's like this cosmic dream in which we all have the opportunity to wake up, right? And some people just aren't ready, right? And maybe they'll go through this life not what maybe they just want to party. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you will be reborn in the simulation again and again
Yeah.
and again until you're ready to wake up. You don't have to wake up. No one says you have to wake up,
No.
right? That's what the ancient rishis said. They were like, some people just don't want to wake up. Okay. There's no moral judgment about it. But for those people who want to finally say, okay, in the simulation, in the cosmic dream, there is so much suffering that is involved with the attachment to the game that I finally am like, I want liberation, freedom from that suffering. And that's the question. Are you in a place where you're like, okay, I still want to be in the game, but I want liberation from the suffering? And that's kind of what the journey is about for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Do you want liberation from the suffering, or are you just being stoked, being so in it and being on this up and down like cycle of absolute thrill, sugar high, crashing down like a little, when our kids, they're screaming, crying because they got chocolate and all that. And then you could watch them and you can watch the sugar crash come after they get all the ice cream and everything they wanted. And then they're, you know what I mean? We're no different as adults, it's the same thing, but it's different things. I'm going to go buy this boat. I can't wait, and then you get it. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, it's what a pain in the ass. And I got these
Yeah.
bills and this insurance. I just want to get rid of this thing. And you know what I mean? You went
Yeah.
from like this to this after
And
a
a few years go
while,
by and somebody's got a bigger boat and then you want that one. You know,
of course.
this guy's got a boat and he's got somebody who drives it for him. You know what I mean? Like it's endless. It's endless.
So you know what's really crazy is that when I look at my desires for whatever it is, my guitar, my whatever it is, that I when I really sit back and analyze it, it's no different than me wanting the chocolate. Right? What I'm really seeking is not the item, but the way the item is going to make me feel.
Yeah, well, I think that, we're talking earlier about the mirage of things. And I think that's kind of why you get sucked in so deeply is not the desire for that end result. It's just the way it's making you feel. The
Mhm.
way it's making you feel is where the power is.
It's all an inside job.
It's all an inside job.
And it's like the thrill of the boat is really the thrill of researching the boat, right?
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, I remember like reading about Anthony Kiedis's autobiography, Scar Tissue. Amazing.
Mhm.
And it's great because he's very candid about his drug addiction, and just about how, even when he was worth, 30, 40 million, he would still end up in a sleazy ass Motel 6, not the Beverly Hills Hilton, but
Yeah, yeah.
Motel 6 beneath the, you know what I mean? Beneath the freeway, shooting
Yep.
up with, you know, and why? Because the thrill of it was the scoring and the thinking about it and the putting it together and getting it on the table. And it's, because everything happens right here, it's the chocolate is the same way, right? So I'm sitting there, you're sitting there, we're talking about the chocolate, you're starting to envision the chocolate. That is starting to create this sense of this thrill. The thrill is starting. The thrill is starting.
Hate it. Chocolate.
but yeah, it's all chocolate. It's all chocolate. Willy.
It's
That's
all
why. That's
chocolate.
why the greatest movie, is Willy Wonka's friggin' Chocolate Factory. Playing
Yeah.
on the golden ticket. But I think, like with what the doctor was saying in the podcast, is it's really true. It's not just about awareness and watching this happen within my body and within my mind, the craving come up, or the avoidance, where I'm like starting to feel like, okay, I'm at work or whatever it is, and I'm starting to feel like this low level uncomfortable buzzing in my body. It's when I can become aware of that, then I can start to take control of it. I can start to say, okay, I'm not going to push this away. I'm actually going to dive into it inside of and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to let myself feel it, and feel it for as long as it takes for it to start to loosen its control over me, or the desire,
Yeah.
the craving, the avoidance, or and so what I found, and I think, is that journey inside, right? To me, that's the martial arts journey. That's it. So we want to, the idea of martial arts, if you look at like all the movies, it really deals with, even the Matrix. Remember when he went and saw the Oracle, I think there was a sign above her door, and she pointed to it, and it's like, you know what that means? I think it was Latin, and it said, "Know thyself." That's
Yeah.
it. That is it. That's the journey. And so
Yeah.
these conversations that we're having right now point the way inside, always, continually. And then we got to that motivates us. And then we need to take the time, even if it's just 5 minutes of sitting in quiet and going inside and starting to know thyself.
And I think like what is important that I know that I struggle with, and I know a lot of people do too, is like the being kind to yourself, like throughout, because I have like this voice in my head that's like, yeah, you stupid fuck. What the fuck is wrong with you? You fucking asshole. You know what I mean? Like, oh, what a fucking shithead. You know what I mean? Like, how could you be so fucking stupid? How could you be so weak? You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Um, that's not a good guy to have around. That
No,
guy, I mean, you know, it's like that
it's
family
not
systems
good.
thing. Like that guy's, he's not a good guy. He's not helping you. Cause it's like, then you become ashamed to yourself. And then it's like, we're all human, and, everybody has their own like Achilles heel. Everybody has different versions of, these things. Some people it's just chocolate and that's it. Other people it's heroin. Like but everybody's got some version of this, and being kinder to yourself, I think, would help. And I'd like to be kinder to myself. I don't always know how to do that, but I would like to. I saw
Yeah.
somebody said something. I came across my feed, and I thought this was really cool. This was really cool.
Mhm.
The guy was like, when you wake up in the morning, go into the mirror, look yourself dead in the eye, and say, "Hey, man, I love you." And
Mhm.
like, and I thought that was like, that it hit me like, like really like hit me hard. And it was like, wow, that's weird, but really interesting and powerful. Like, because think about it, you don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, but like, if you can't love that guy, who can you actually really love?
No, nobody. No one. All you can do is try and take things from people to make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
That's not love.
No.
Yeah. We
Heavy,
have to, it
heavy.
has to, it's an inside job. It has to start inside, you know? So
And we're
if we're
taught that
thinking,
that's being selfish, kind of, right? Like, doesn't it like that? Like, I know, like, that's the way I grew up. You know what I mean? Like, that word was thrown out a lot. Selfish, selfish, selfish. You know what I mean? And
you think,
like that's and I think societally there's a lot of that, but like, you gotta love yourself, man, because like all of the stupid shit you do, oftentimes is because you don't, you know what I mean? You like subconsciously, you don't believe that you deserve, you know, to be happy, or you don't believe that you deserve, you know, the right outcome, and you know, and you don't even realize it. You know, I've
Dude,
I've
you know
had
what?
multiple therapists tell me that I hate myself.
That's awesome.
And it was like
Oh,
groundbreaking to me, because like I've always had a healthy ego and felt good about who I am, and you know, and confident guy. And but the more I chewed on it, I'm like, there might be something to what the fuck you're saying. And
yeah.
not never would that occur to me ever. But it's interesting.
Yeah, think about this, man. This is wild. But you know, when I was in, I don't know, I was in like fifth or sixth grade. What I realized when we were on the on the field playing during recess, right? What I realized when we were picking teams is that it wasn't the team that usually won, almost always won, was not the team that had the best athletes. It was the team that had the best chemistry.
Hmm.
At a very young age, I saw that. And it really
Interesting.
goes to that notion of synergy, right? And with synergy, we become, as human beings, peak performance really requires us to to work together, and we become greater than the sum of our parts. And that's kind of what I experienced when I was young. And I was like, okay, I need to pick guys who get along, or girls, whatever, who get along really well together, because they're going to work, they're going to have the best teamwork, and they're going to have the best outcome. And for many people, that becomes lost. And so you see it at work, you see where they just try and browbeat people into getting the results. And that may work in the short term, but then they have people who can't stand them, don't like going into work, don't like being around them, because they're just basically an asshole. And so it really starts to undermine the performance of the organization. Great leaders inspire people to rise up, not just by being an asshole, but being like, man, I really believe in you. You know what I mean? That's great
Yeah.
leadership. We have to do that with ourselves, right? So
Yeah.
that voice that we have that is like, you're a piece of shit, da 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 da, that's like the worst possible coach that you could ever have. Because after a
100%.
while, you're just like, fuck you, man. And you will start doing things to sabotage and get back at that voice in your head. And then you get in this cycle of self sabotage all the time because you're fighting that inner thing right there.
So heavy.
It's fucking really heavy, especially when we're talking about performance and all of that. It's not just about like well-being. It's about, no, man, I want to rise to levels where I'm like, there becomes with really high achievers, there is a high level of confidence. And confidence is antithetical to that voice that says you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit. The voice in a high level achiever, someone who wins, is like, I deserve this, and I'm going to get it. This is mine. Whatever it is.
What's interesting is that like for me, like that's not ever been the issue. Like the confidence and the drive and the real challenge for me is in the moments of stillness, in the moments of just the monotony that is part of
Life.
life. Like
Yeah.
like I if there isn't progress, if there isn't movement and motion, that's when I really start to fucking freak out. Even if the big picture is moving according to plan, even if most of the prospects feel good, there's just this thing in me that like this need to hit the Pez dispenser, the instant gratification of feeling progress, feeling production, feeling, it's a drug thing. It's a total like it's a total like the inability to sit still, And I mean, I've meditated, I've been, for many, many years. I mean, I'm able to do it, but like, there's just this thing in me that like constantly needs reassurance, constantly needs validation. And I don't even know if it's like the validate. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some ego
It
validation to it.
they talk about it in the podcast where it's a
Yeah.
toxic fuel. They're like it's a toxic fuel to make up for this lack inside, probably from that child, one of those childhood
Sure. It's
samskaras.
childhood things.
You're a piece of shit. Being told inadvertently, a parent doesn't have to say you're a piece of shit. A parent can just be like all the time and get lacking that. Well, all of a sudden the child like comes to the parent full of wanting unconditional love, which they deserve, and all of a sudden it's conditional, and it's conditional, and it's conditional. What that basically says is you're a piece of shit until you earn it.
And then you're subconsciously trying to recreate that love
Totally.
in so many different scenarios. And without even like understanding it, without even realizing that it has anything to do with what's happening in the present moment as a full-blown adult, like, until you really start to peel the layers back and you start to see that that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to recreate that love, that feeling of safety, that feeling of acceptance, that feeling of like, I'm a good boy. You know what I mean? Mommy, am I a good boy? You know what I mean? Like, and it's
Yeah,
crazy. It's
it's
crazy.
crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, like, had I not, had I not gone through therapy and known other people who have and read about this kind of stuff and had I not had context about how, yes, this is really a real thing, it sounds so absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's not. It's so and the reason these conversations right here are so important is because we start to feel isolated and alone, and we feel like I'm the only person who feels like that, when the reality is that a great portion of
Everybody,
us are walking
almost.
around with this same thing that is
Yeah, but with
sabotaging us.
without the ability to talk about it, because it's like you have this. I mean, not without like we don't have the tools, we don't have the there's not enough context, because it's like, you know you want to go out there as a grown man, who productive human being who makes things happen, who to a certain extent lots of other people um look up to. And when you break it all down to brass tacks, it's like, am I a good boy? You don't want to fucking say that to anybody. You know what I
No.
mean? Like,
But that's what you want to hear. That's
but
what
that's
your
what you want to
subconscious
hear.
wants to hear. Yeah.
That's what you want to hear. And you want to get a pat on the back of the head, and you want to be hugged, and you want to be, doted over and
Validated
obsessed
and
over.
yeah.
And like, how do you say that to people? You know what I mean? That's why people fucking drink, and that's why people do drugs, and that's why people, have affairs, and that's why people do, fucking OD on chocolate. That's all of it.
Yeah. We be engaged in that self-destructive behavior because this voice that is like so incessant, it never fucking rests. It never rests. And that's why, we have to, I think, again, the only solution, I think I talked about it where, uh, every time one of the guys was on Rich Roll's podcast, and he just talked about how, every time he heard this voice, he had to counter it. He had to read something to himself that he had on his phone. I love you. You're fine just the way you are. You've accomplished a lot. This is a voice in your head that isn't real. And he would just go through this litany of these things they would read to his subconscious to exercise that voice. I used to have that voice in my head. It was like my college, my high school, like football coach or whatever. You guys are a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. That drove me for so long. That was, in my head. And now it's not, thank God, and now,
I have
because the
like more
question,
than
go
one.
ahead.
I have like more than one. I have this thing that happens to me, and I'm very aware of it, which I think I'm grateful for that. Um, but I have this like point and counterpoint voice. Like, you know, I'll do this thing to where I'm like, I'll have this reaction to something or someone and say, "Oh yeah, it's fucking, it's a terrible person," or, "How could I let myself get involved with, with these people that, doing this stuff that are no good," or, or and then all of a sudden there'll be this other voice that kicks up and it's like, "Well, but," you know what I mean? Like the Jewish attorney shows up, like, and like has like this like, and it's just this cacophony of shit that's like in your head. That's just like, you know, and and then there's the awareness that's watching this conversation take place. And, is that the beginnings of schizophrenia, or am I just a regular human being?
You're a regular human being. You're a regular human being, and that's where like this journey is like, okay, I need to take control of my destiny and my, because really it is our destiny. The way that the voices in our head influence our reactions influence our habits influence our destiny. And so, and not only that, one of the things they talked about was, when we rely on toxic energy to get things done, to because in our society everything is about achievement, right, and doing an action, and it's never about sitting still, being, because all creativity comes from the sitting still, right? But we have this anti-creative, anti, you know self-aware society where it's achieve, achieve, achieve. And the reality is, when we rely upon like a toxic type of energy to fuel us, we're unhappy, we're miserable, and we're miserable to be around. And what happens is everybody around us has to walk on eggshells, right? And we that makes us feel the ego, it makes the ego part of us feel powerful, but the reality is it's weakness. And so the ancient, like the samurai, it was like, no, Mushin mind is all about being able to go into combat without feeling rage, right? So I can just flow. It's so the weakness comes from relying upon toxic energy like rage or the need for validation. It's like, just go through the steps, be calm, and you'll be happier, and everyone around you will be happier. That is the higher level. That is
Yeah.
emotional well-being. That is emotional wellness. That's the goal. If you all you do is rely all we do is rely on toxic energy, we may achieve things, but in the end we're miserable, and we end up overweight and with high cholesterol and high blood pressure, and we end up
And
dying early,
and unhappy, and
right?
not, not
And not happy.
enjoying
The
the present
process.
moments, never being in
Yeah.
the present moment, always being chasing something or running from something or running to something, never being here and now. And the toxic fuel thing, I think that's I resonate with that for sure. I think a lot of people have become successful or are driven to success from the energy of, look, well, I'm gonna fucking show them. You know what I mean? You say I can't do
Mm.
it, or like they didn't believe in me, or, this is how they think that I am. I'm gonna
Bet
show them.
against me. Bet
Yeah,
against
bet
me. I
against
dare
me.
you. Yeah.
And that is, it's that fuel doesn't burn clean. That fuel doesn't
No.
burn clean. It's burning you up inside.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
burning you up
For
inside, and
sure.
you get success, but like, at what cost?
At what cost? Exactly. At what cost? Dude, this was such a good one, man. Holy
Yeah.
moly, dude. This is a heavy one, dude. This is a really heavy one. Because it's so
Telling me.
deep. Like what we're talking about is so endemic in our society. And it's something I dealt with. It's something you dealt with. But the beautiful thing, like even in the podcast, it's like there is a solution. The solution is going to be, is hard because it's so easy. Right? The solution is just sit and be
Still.
still and
Shut the
sit and
fuck
watch
up
your mind.
and
Shut
breathe.
the fuck up. Shut the fuck up and breathe. Yes. And that's hard because it's so easy, you know?
I
So,
know.
no,
Yeah,
that's
there's nothing to
dope,
there's
man.
nothing to figure out. There's no problem to solve. Like, you are the solution.
Just be here now. It's like all those mantras that you hear people talk about. It's like they're fucking true, man. Be
They
here
are true.
now. Be quiet. Be quiet. Just sit. Yeah, it's dope. It's dope. What
Right on.
we'll definitely be talking about this for the next year. What
Or the
anything
rest of our lives.
the rest of our lives. This is the journey, right? And the goal. I love, I love the idea that, the other, I've talked about this, how the other word for enlightenment is liberation. And liberation just means freedom. Freedom from the relentless tyranny of those voices and that need to do, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, just being is where the greatest joy comes from, at least like real happiness, not thrills that are up and down and up and down. So
Yeah.
that's dope. You watching anything good?
I'm watching Bad Monkey with Vince Vaughn on Apple TV. It's real good.
Just
man.
finished it. It's
just fun. It's fun.
It's so good. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. He's great.
Oh, yeah.
He has so much charisma. Yeah, I really liked it. What episode are you on?
Probably like 4, 5, maybe. Like
It's
in that
so
realm.
good. All the way through, it's so good, man. I really dug it.
I'm enjoying it.
Did you watch what was it? Wolves with Brad Pitt and George Clooney
No, what's that?
on Apple TV? Oh, bro, you
No,
got to watch it. Remember in Pulp Fiction when Harvey Keitel showed up after the dude blew his head off in the back of Samuel L. Jackson, the wolf.
Yeah.
This movie is called The Wolves. And so it's about a character like the wolf, but there's two of them, and it's George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and it's really good.
Wow. Got it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Sick.
And then the third one I watched, I'm actually on a streak on Apple TV. The third one I watched is Sugar with Colin Farrell, I think. And he's it's a really noir, like detective kind of a movie, but it's got this crazy sci-fi twist. So it's good. Right. It's not as good as like Bad Monkey, but it's good. I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it. But there's like a sci-fi twist that you're like, where did that come from?
I like it.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. So watch Wolf. You're gonna love it, man.
I will.
All right, brother. Until next time, man. This was a good one.
Right on. Hell yeah.
All right, bro.